She looked like someone who could barely stand. Shoulders slumped. Eyes heavy with exhaustion. Just another hospital worker in wrinkled scrubs, counting down the minutes until she could crawl into bed. But when evil walked through that diner door and grabbed an innocent woman by the wrist, they learned the truth. Some people don't break. They've just been waiting for the right moment to remind the world what real strength looks like. You know that feeling when you've been awake so long that your body doesn't even feel like yours anymore? When your feet ache with every step, and your mind is swimming in that foggy place between exhaustion and autopilot. That's where Laura Bennett was that morning. She pushed through the glass door of Riverside Diner at 7:43 a.m., and the little bell above chimed, cheerful, oblivious. The smell of coffee and bacon grease hit her like a warm wall, and for a moment, just a moment, she let herself believe that everything in the world was normal. Safe. Predictable. Her scrubs were faded green, the kind that had been through 1,000 wash cycles and had lost their brightness somewhere around wash number 300. There was a small coffee stain near her collar, a souvenir from hour 11 of her shift. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail that had started neat 12 hours ago, but now hung loose and tired just like her. She'd just finished a night shift at Portland General Hospital. 12 hours of beeping monitors, worried families, emergencies that came in waves. 1 minute you're checking vitals, the next you're holding someone's hand while they take their last breath. Then you clock out, step into the morning light, and the world just continues. People buying coffee. Cars honking. Life moving forward like none of it ever happened. Laura found her usual spot, table 7, near the window but not too close to the door. She liked to see the street, watch the city wake up. It grounded her. Reminded her that while she'd been inside those hospital walls fighting to keep people alive, the rest of Portland had been sleeping, dreaming, living their regular lives. She didn't come to Riverside Diner for the food, though the pancakes were decent. She came because it was close, because it was quiet, because after 12 hours of constant noise and need and urgency, she craved ordinary. She craved boring. The waitress approached with a coffee pot and a tired smile. Her name tag read Mia. Laura had seen her here before. A young woman, maybe 23 or 24, with kind eyes and a nervous energy that never quite settled. The kind of person who refilled your coffee before you had to ask, who remembered you liked your eggs scrambled with a little cheese. The usual? Mia asked, and her voice had a tremor in it. Subtle. Most people wouldn't notice. But Laura noticed. Laura had been trained to notice things. Before the scrubs, before the hospital halls and the 4 drips and the cardiac monitors, there had been a different uniform. Desert camouflage. Body armor. A rifle that became as familiar as her own heartbeat. She'd served 2 tours in Iraq with the Marines, and even though that life felt like it belonged to a different person now, some things never leave you. You learn to read a room in seconds. You learn to spot danger before it announces itself. You learn that survival often depends on the things people don't say. And right now, Mia Park was saying nothing, but her shaking hands were screaming. Yeah, the usual, Laura said softly, watching Mia's face. You doing okay? Mia's smile brightened, but it didn't reach her eyes. Oh, Monday morning. Everyone's grumpy before their coffee. It was a Wednesday. Laura didn't push. She'd learned that too. Sometimes people need space to tell their truth. You can't force it out. So she just nodded, accepted her coffee, and watched as Mia hurried back toward the kitchen, glancing over her shoulder twice like she expected something to be following her. The diner was filling up with the early crowd. Construction workers in dusty boots grabbing breakfast burritos to go. A couple of retired guys at the counter arguing about the Trailblazers. A woman in business attire typing furiously on her laptop, probably trying to finish something before her morning meeting. Normal people. Normal problems. Laura wrapped her hands around her coffee mug and let the warmth seep into her palms. She was so tired. Bone tired. The kind of tired that makes you feel like you're underwater, moving in slow motion while the world speeds around you. She thought about her apartment, small, quiet, just her and Rex, her service dog. He'd be waiting by the door, tail wagging, ready for his morning walk before they both collapsed for a few hours of sleep. Simple. Peaceful. That's all she wanted anymore. Peace. The war had taken enough. It had taken her hearing in her left ear, 40% gone from an IED blast in Fallujah. It had taken 2 years of her life, and if she was honest, it had taken pieces of her soul that she was still trying to figure out how to get back. The nightmares had lessened over the years, but they never fully disappeared. Some nights she still woke up reaching for a weapon that wasn't there, her heart hammering, sweat soaking through her sheets. But nursing had saved her. Helping people, healing instead of fighting, it gave her purpose. It gave her a way to put all that intensity, all that training, all that need to protect into something good. She took a long sip of coffee and closed her eyes. Just a few more minutes, then she'd eat, go home, sleep. Reset. Do it all again tonight. That's when the door opened. The bell chimed again, but this time the sound felt different. Heavier somehow. Laura's eyes opened, and she saw two men walk in. They didn't look at the menu. They didn't head for a table. They moved with purpose, their eyes scanning the room until they locked onto Mia, who was refilling coffee at a table near the counter. Everything in Laura's body went still. The men were both in their 30s, dressed in jeans and dark jackets. Nothing particularly threatening about their appearance. But Laura had learned long ago that danger doesn't always announce itself with weapons and shouting. Sometimes it walks in wearing ordinary clothes and a calm expression, and it's the eyes that give it away. These men had predator eyes. Mia saw them and froze. The coffee pot in her hand trembled, and for just a second, her whole body seemed to shrink, like she was trying to make herself disappear. The taller man, bald, with a thin scar across his left cheek, smiled. It was the kind of smile that had nothing to do with happiness. "Mia," he said, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "We need to talk." The diner didn't go silent. Not exactly. The construction workers kept eating. The laptop woman kept typing. The retired guys kept arguing. But there was a shift, a collective decision to not see what was happening. To look away. To stay safe. Laura didn't look away. Mia set down the coffee pot with shaking hands. I told you I need more time. I'm trying, Trying isn't paying, the second man said. He was shorter, stockier, with dark hair slicked back and a gold chain visible under his collar. His voice was quiet, conversational, which somehow made it worse. "We had an agreement, Mia. Every Wednesday. $300. Keeps things peaceful around here. $300. Every week." Laura did the math instantly. $1,200 a month. For what? Protection? From what? From them, obviously. Extortion. Plain and simple. Mia's voice dropped to a desperate whisper. "I only have $200 this week. My mom's medical bills she needed." "Not our problem," the tall one interrupted, and his hand shot out, gripping Mia's wrist. "Not hard enough to bruise, but firm enough to control. You come up short, there are consequences. That's how this works." And there it was. The line in the sand. Laura watched Mia's face crumble. Watched fear flood her eyes. Watched her glance around the diner, silently begging someone, anyone, to help. No one moved. The construction workers suddenly found their eggs fascinating. The laptop woman's fingers flew faster across her keyboard, eyes locked on the screen. The retired guys went quiet, staring into their coffee cups like they contained the secrets of the universe. This was the moment. This was the moment when good people choose comfort over courage. When the collective agreement to not get involved wins. When evil gets permission to continue because silence is easier than risk. Laura knew that feeling. She'd seen it in villages in Iraq, where people were so terrorized they couldn't even make eye contact with the Marines who'd come to help. Fear is a prison. It locks you in place and throws away the key. But Laura had also learned something else during those 2 tours in the desert. Something that had been burned into her soul through firefights and IED blasts and nights spent wondering if she'd see the morning. Evil only wins when good people decide their safety matters more than someone else's suffering. She was so tired. God, she was tired. Her shift had been brutal. They'd lost a patient, a father of 3, and she'd had to tell his wife, had to watch that woman's entire world shatter in real time. Laura's feet hurt. Her back ached. She had maybe 3 hours before exhaustion turned into something dangerous. All she wanted was to eat her eggs, drink her coffee, and go home. But Mia's wrist was still in that man's grip. And Mia's eyes were still begging. And the silence in the diner was so loud it was deafening. Laura set down her coffee mug. She stood up. Her legs felt heavy, but they moved. 1 step. Then another. The diner floor creaked under her worn sneakers, and suddenly, the ambient noise dropped. People noticed. The construction workers looked up. The laptop woman's fingers stopped typing. Laura walked toward the counter where the 2 men had Mia cornered, and with each step, her exhaustion seemed to burn away, replaced by something older. Something forged in desert heat and combat discipline. "Excuse me," Laura said, and her voice was calm. "Steady. The kind of calm that comes from facing down worse things than two thugs in a breakfast diner. I think you should let her go. The tall man turned, still holding Mia's wrist, and looked Laura up and down. Took in the faded scrubs, the tired eyes, the ponytail. His expression shifted from surprise to amusement. This doesn't concern you, sweetheart, he said, his tone dripping with condescension. Go back to your table. Laura didn't move. She positioned herself between the men and the exit, a tactical decision made in a fraction of a second. I'm making it my concern. Let her go. Walk away. This doesn't have to get ugly. The shorter man laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. You got no idea who you're messing with, lady. We run this neighborhood. You think some tired nurse is gonna. He didn't finish the sentence because Laura moved. Not aggressively. Not with anger. With precision. She stepped forward, her hand moving to the tall man's wrist, the one gripping Mia. A specific pressure point, applied with exact force. His fingers released instantly, more from surprise than pain, and Mia stumbled backward, free. Last chance, Laura said quietly, her eyes locked on the tall man's face. Walk away. For a moment, everything hung in balance. The diner was completely silent now. Every eye on them. The choice point stretched out, thin and fragile. Then the shorter man's hand moved toward his jacket, and Laura saw the glint of metal before he'd even cleared the fabric. A knife. And just like that, the exhausted nurse disappeared, and the Marine stepped forward. Time does a strange thing in moments like these. For most people in that diner, everything happened in a blur. A sudden explosion of movement, a crash, shouting, and then silence. Blink and you miss it. Over before your brain can catch up to your eyes. But for Laura Bennett, time stretched out like taffy, each second expanding into crystal-clear detail. This was the gift or curse of combat training. When violence erupts, your body doesn't freeze. It slows everything down. You see the knife hand rising. You calculate angles and distances. You move before conscious thought even catches up. The shorter man pulled the knife from his jacket. A folding blade, maybe 4 inches, the kind you can buy at any hardware store. Not military grade, but sharp enough. Dangerous enough. He thrust it forward, aiming for Laura's midsection, expecting her to stumble back, to scream, to give him space and control. She did none of those things. Laura's left hand came up in a practiced arc, deflecting his knife hand outward, away from her body. Simultaneously, her right hand drove forward into his solar plexus. Not a punch exactly, but a strike with her palm, driving the air from his lungs. He gasped, his eyes going wide with shock and pain. Before he could recover, Laura twisted his knife hand, applying pressure to his wrist in a way that made holding on to anything impossible. The knife clattered to the linoleum floor, spinning once before coming to rest near a table leg. 3 seconds. That's all it took. The tall man with the scar realized what was happening and lunged forward, trying to grab Laura from behind, trying to use his size and strength to overpower her. Big mistake. Laura dropped her weight, making herself a smaller target, and drove her elbow backward into his ribs. She felt the impact reverberate up her arm, a solid hit, right where it would hurt most. He grunted, his grip loosening, and Laura spun inside his reach, sweeping his legs with a move she'd practiced 10,000 times in training. He went down hard, his head bouncing once off the floor with a sickening thud. Not unconscious, but definitely dazed, staring up at the ceiling tiles like he couldn't quite figure out how he'd gotten horizontal. The shorter man was still gasping for air, doubled over, one hand clutching his stomach. Laura kicked the knife away, sending it skittering under a booth. And then she did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She placed herself between both men and Mia, arms loose at her sides, breathing steady, and waited. Not to attack. Not to escalate. To protect. Stay down, she said quietly, and her voice held no anger. No triumph. Just a simple statement of fact. I don't want to hurt you more than I already have. But I will if I have to. From somewhere near her feet, she heard a familiar sound, a low, rumbling growl that made both men freeze. Rex. Her service dog had been resting under table 7, out of sight, doing what service dogs do, staying calm, staying ready. But the moment violence erupted, the moment his person was threatened, years of training kicked in. He'd moved like a shadow, positioning himself beside Laura, teeth bared, every muscle coiled and ready. He was a Belgian Malinois, 70 pounds of loyalty and protective instinct. The same breed used by Navy SEALs and Secret Service agents. Rex had washed out of police dog training because he was too gentle with civilians, but right now, with his ears pinned back and that growl resonating from deep in his chest, he looked like exactly what he'd been bred to be. A weapon, waiting for the command to engage. "Good boy," Laura murmured, her eyes never leaving the two men on the floor. "Easy. We're okay." The tall man with the scar made the mistake of trying to sit up. Rex's growl deepened, and the man went very, very still. "Someone call 911, Laura said, her voice carrying across the silent diner. "Tell them we need police." Two men, attempted assault with a deadly weapon. "Tell them the situation is contained, but we need officers here now." For a moment, nobody moved. The entire diner remained frozen, like someone had hit pause on reality. Then the woman with the laptop fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking as she dialed. One of the construction workers stood up, moving closer. Not to help the men on the ground, but to position himself near Laura, a silent statement of solidarity. The retired guys at the counter exchanged glances, and one of them nodded slowly, like he'd just witnessed something he needed to remember. Mia was crying, her back pressed against the counter, both hands covering her mouth. Not scared anymore, relieved. The kind of tears that come when a weight you've been carrying for so long suddenly lifts, and you can finally breathe. "It's okay," Laura said softly, glancing back at her. "You're safe now. They can't hurt you anymore." "You don't know what you've done," the shorter man wheezed, still clutching his stomach. "We're not alone. There are others. You just made things so much worse for her. For yourself." Laura crouched down, lowering herself to his eye level. Up close, she could see he was younger than she'd thought, maybe 30, with acne scars on his cheeks and a tattoo creeping up his neck. Someone's son. Someone who'd made choices that led him here, to this floor, in this moment. "Listen to me carefully," she said, and her voice was gentle now. Almost kind. "I spent 2 years in Fallujah. I've been shot at by people who actually knew what they were doing. I've had mortars land close enough to feel the heat on my face. So when you threaten me, when you tell me I've made things worse, I want you to understand something." She leaned in slightly, making sure he could see her eyes. "I'm not scared of you. I'm not scared of whoever you work for. And neither is she anymore. Because now she knows that not everyone in this world looks away. Some people stand up. And once you know that, once you really understand that you're not alone, fear starts to lose its power." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. The police were coming. Fast response time. Portland PD must have been close by. The tall man groaned, touching his head where it had connected with the floor. "You're gonna regret this," he muttered, but there was no conviction in his voice. Just pain and shock and the slow realization that they'd badly miscalculated. "Maybe," Laura said, standing back up. "But I doubt it." 3 police cars arrived within 4 minutes, officers pouring through the door with hands on their weapons, assessing the scene with practiced efficiency. Laura raised her hands immediately, not submission, just clarity, making sure they understood she wasn't a threat. "I'm the one who defended the waitress," she said calmly. "Those 2 men on the floor were extorting her. One of them pulled a knife. The knife is under that booth to your right. I disarmed them both and held them until you arrived." The lead officer, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and graying hair pulled back in a tight bun, took in the scene. The 2 men on the floor. The terrified waitress. The diner full of witnesses nodding in agreement. Rex sitting calmly at Laura's side, his service dog vest clearly visible. "Anyone hurt?" the officer asked. "Bruised egos," Laura said. "Maybe a mild concussion. I used minimal force necessary to neutralize the threat." The officer's eyebrow went up slightly. "Minimal force. Military? Marines. 2 tours Iraq. Medical discharge for years ago." Something shifted in the officer's expression, respect, understanding. She'd probably been military herself, or had family who served. You recognize the language, the bearing, the way someone stands when they've been trained to face down chaos. "Well, ma'am, looks like you still remember your training. Hold tight while we sort this out." The next 20 minutes were a blur of statements and paperwork. The 2 men were arrested, read their rights, and loaded into separate patrol cars. Mia gave her statement through tears, not just about this morning, but about the last 8 months of weekly payments, of threats, of living in constant fear that one day she'd come up short and something terrible would happen. And then something extraordinary occurred. One of the construction workers approached Officer Martinez. That was the lead officer's name, Laura learned. He cleared his throat, shifted his weight like a kid about to confess something to a teacher. "I seen those guys before," he said quietly. "They've been hitting up the bodega on Morrison Street. My cousin owns it. They make him pay too. Every week. He's too scared to report it." Officer Martinez pulled out her notepad. "I need his name and contact information." "I'll call him," the man said. "Right now. If what this lady did means he can stop paying, means he can be free of them, he'll talk. I know he will." And just like that, the dam broke. The laptop woman approached next. She'd seen them at the coffee shop 2 blocks over, pressuring the owner. The retired guys knew a friend whose restaurant had been targeted. By noon, Officer Martinez had 17 names. 17 people who'd been paying protection money, too terrified to speak up, convinced that they were alone in their suffering. But they weren't alone. They'd never been alone. They just needed one person to stand up first, to show them that it was possible. That fear could be broken. The investigation that followed would take weeks, but the bones of it came together quickly. The 2 men, Derek Lansing and Marcus Vega, were part of a larger operation that had been running protection rackets across 3 Portland neighborhoods for almost 2 years. They'd targeted small businesses, immigrant-owned shops, anyone who seemed vulnerable and unlikely to report them. They'd collected thousands of dollars, ruined lives, created a climate of fear that had infected entire blocks. And it ended because a tired nurse in faded scrubs decided that looking away was no longer an option. By the time Laura was cleared to leave, it was almost noon. The breakfast rush had long since passed, and the diner had emptied out except for Mia, who sat at the counter with a cup of tea she hadn't touched, staring at nothing. Laura approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Hey, you doing okay?" Mia looked up, and her eyes were red-rimmed but clear. "I don't know how to thank you. I don't even know where to start." "You don't have to thank me," Laura said, sliding onto the stool beside her. "You were in a situation where you had no power, no options. That wasn't your fault." "I should have reported them earlier," Mia whispered. "I should have been braver." Laura reached out and gently touched Mia's hand. "Survival isn't cowardice. You did what you had to do to stay safe, to keep this job, so you could take care of your mom. There's no shame in that. The shame belongs to them, not you. But you didn't even hesitate. You just stood up and," Mia's voice broke. "How did you know what to do?" Laura was quiet for a moment, thinking about Iraq. About the village where they'd found a woman who'd been beaten by insurgents for teaching girls to read. About the moment when Laura had realized that all her training, all her strength, was worth nothing if she didn't use it to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. "I've been scared before," Laura said finally. "Really scared. The kind of scared that makes you want to curl up and disappear. But I learned something important. Fear is just information. It tells you something matters. Something's at stake. The question is what you do with that information. And you chose to act. I chose to not let someone suffer when I had the ability to help. That's all." Laura smiled softly. "Besides, I was really looking forward to those pancakes. They ruined my breakfast. Someone had to do something." Mia laughed, a wet, surprised sound that turned into a sob, then back into a laugh. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "The pancakes. Right. Very heroic motivation." "The most heroic," Laura agreed, and they both laughed, the kind of laughter that releases tension and fear and all the emotions that have nowhere else to go. The diner owner emerged from the kitchen, an older Korean man named Mr. Park, Mia's uncle. He'd called her parents, assured them she was safe, and now he approached with a plate of pancakes, eggs, and bacon. "For you," he said to Laura, setting it down in front of her. "No charge. Today, tomorrow, any day you come here. You eat free." "That's really not necessary." "Yes," he said firmly. "It is. You gave my niece her life back. Least I can do is feed you." Laura accepted with a nod of gratitude, and as she ate those pancakes, which were cold by now, but somehow tasted better than anything she'd eaten in months, she thought about what it means to be a hero. People think heroism is this grand thing, this big moment where you charge into battle with flags waving and music swelling. But real heroism is quieter than that. It's seeing someone in pain and deciding their well-being matters more than your comfort. It's standing up when sitting down would be easier. It's using whatever strength you have, whether that's military training or just a voice that says, "No, this isn't okay," to push back against darkness. Laura wasn't special. She'd just been in the right place at the right time with the right skills. But those skills came from sacrifice, from 2 tours in a desert that had taken pieces of her she'd never get back. From nights in a hospital wondering if she'd ever feel normal again. From years of therapy learning to live with PTSD and hearing loss and memories that sometimes ambushed her in the produce aisle at Safeway. If all of that, all the pain and loss and struggle, could be used to give Mia Park her freedom back, to help 17 other people escape their own private hells, then maybe it meant something. Maybe it was worth it. The story made the local news that evening. Local nurse stops extortion ring, read the headline, accompanied by a blurry photo someone had taken with their phone. The news anchor called Laura a hero, called it an inspiring story of courage and community. Laura watched it from her apartment couch, Rex's head in her lap, and felt strange about the whole thing. She'd just done what needed doing. Nothing more, nothing less. Her phone buzzed with messages. Old Marine buddies reaching out, neighbors she barely knew sending congratulations, even her supervisor at the hospital calling to say how proud everyone was. But the message that made her tear up came from a number she didn't recognize. This is Mia. I went to my mom's doctor appointment today without being terrified about money for the first time in 8 months. I laughed with her. Really laughed. I forgot what that felt like. Thank you for giving that back to me. Thank you for seeing me when everyone else looked away. Laura typed back. You gave yourself that back by being brave enough to survive until someone could help. I'm proud of you. She set her phone down and looked out her window at the Portland skyline, the city lights beginning to twinkle on as the sun set behind the hills. Somewhere out there, 17 people were going to sleep tonight without fear for the first time in months. Somewhere out there, Mia Park was probably cooking dinner for her mom, smiling free. And here, in this small apartment with its secondhand furniture and walls that needed repainting, Laura Bennett, Marine veteran, registered nurse, exhausted human being, felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. Not because she'd won some fight or defeated some enemy, but because she'd reminded herself of something she'd forgotten during all those long hospital shifts and lonely nights. She still had the power to make things better, to stand between danger and the innocent, to be the person she'd trained so hard to become. The scrubs didn't change that. The exhaustion didn't change that. The passage of time didn't change that. Some things are just part of who you are. Woven into your bones, carved into your soul. And when the moment comes, when someone needs you, when evil thinks it can act with impunity because good people will look away, you stand up. You place yourself in the gap. You remember that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's deciding that someone else's safety matters more than your own comfort. Laura finished her cold pancakes, gave Rex a good scratch behind the ears, and finally, let herself sleep. She dreamed of nothing. No gunfire, no explosions, no screaming. Just quiet. Just peace. And when she woke up for her next shift, she put on her scrubs, tied back her hair, and headed out to do it all over again. To heal people. To help people. To be the person who doesn't look away. Because that's what heroes do. Not just once, in a dramatic moment that makes the news. But every day. In small ways and big ways. In choices that no one sees and choices that everyone remembers. One breakfast at a time. 6 months later, the Riverside Diner installed a small plaque near table 7. It reads simply, "In this place, someone stood up." No name. No explanation needed. The regulars know. Mia knows. And sometimes when Laura comes in for breakfast after her shifts, which she still does every week, she sees it and smiles. Because heroism doesn't need monuments or headlines. It just needs people who decide that today, in this moment, with whatever strength they have, they will not look away. The ripples from that Wednesday morning continue to spread. Of the 17 people who came forward, 12 started a business alliance, supporting each other and watching out for the vulnerable in their community. Mia Park enrolled in nursing school, inspired by the woman in green scrubs who showed her what courage looks like. And Laura Bennett? She's still saving lives. Still showing up tired and determined. Still choosing again and again to be the person who stands in the gap. Because that's what happens when you discover your purpose. You don't retire it. You live it. Every single day.